Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today, I'm going to be talking about actor Morgan Stevens, who spent some time with us on the Waltons and who sadly passed away recently. Morgan first joined us in season 9 in the episode The Waiting, which I spoke a bit about recently. He played a different character, Sam Stoddard, who was a roommate of John Boy's while John Boy was in a coma in the hospital. And he was very positive about his life and his future outlook, despite finding that he was now paralyzed from injuries in the war. But he was upbeat, and he helped keep Mama company at times during her bedside vigil, waiting for John Boy, trying to reach John Boy in his coma. And she felt for him. He was a lovely young man who was alone in the world. And during the course of the episode, they talked about John Boy's writing when Mama was reading some of John Boy's book out loud in hopes of reaching him. And then she had a conversation with Morgan, with his character, about the book and about John Boy. And it was during one of those conversations when they were interrupted by John Boy's first word, Mama. So this was a very significant moment in everyone's life. And then she finally persuaded the woman she was staying with from the Red Cross to take Sam out for Thanksgiving, share Thanksgiving dinner with him. So a lovely episode as a first introduction to Morgan. And I'm sure one of the reasons why they were so happy to bring him back as another character. The next time we saw Morgan was when he joined the cast as Paul Matthews Northridge in the episode The Lumberjack. When he and Erin first meet, it is definitely, if not love at first sight, definitely an attraction at first sight. And a little later in the day, when Erin returns home and is rather mooning around the kitchen and the other Walton girls, including Cindy Walton, are teasing Erin about this. And she describes her first sight of Paul.
I just met the most beautiful man in the world. He's tall and handsome and gentle.
Slow down.
And his hair is the color of autumn leaves.
And all of these very much did define our first impressions of Morgan Stevens. The relationship between Erin and Paul progressed, and very soon they shared their first kiss. However, things did not stay all rosy in Erin's building relationship with Paul. He has secrets that he's not sharing. He has not endeared himself initially to other members of the family when he comes to try and do business with Ben, who's running the mill and the co-op in John's absence. Paul is selling wood at a higher price because he said it is seasoned wood, and he feels it's important to sustain the forests, and he doesn't believe in cutting immature trees down, that impacts the forest and stuff, something that would have been perhaps ahead of its time in the 1940s. Erin invites Paul to supper with the family. Ben is not happy to see Paul there, but as dinner progresses and Paul talks about how important the forest and the trees are to him and their sustainability, Ben is reminded of how John and Grandpa share those same values, and that's always been an important part of how the Waltons feel about the mountain and their responsibility to the land. So Paul does begin to endear himself to the family. This was Morgan's first introduction to a meal around the Walton kitchen table, and he fit right in. I was amused to see how much plaid there was around the table. All of the men are wearing plaid, as was I as Mary Ellen. So plaid was fully on display as a part of the Walton look.
This is it.
What is this place?
Home. This is where I grew up.
Things take a turn south when Paul invites Erin to go meet his family. Paul has fallen out with his father, CEO of Northridge Lumber, which is a huge operation in the area, and monopolizes the majority of the orders for wood. His father does not share his views about the importance of how the wood is taken care of, how the trees are sustained. Over the course of lunch, the two argue, and Erin eventually, after being insulted personally and having her family insulted as hillbillies, she gets up to leave, but not before telling off both Northridge and Paul for using her as just a means to get at each other, and accuses Paul of following in his father's footsteps, not in a positive way. Paul and his father both show up at the Walton house to apologize and say that Erin was right and made them both take a look at their behavior and what was most important to them. In the first of our Walton reunion movies, A Wedding on Walton's Mountain, Morgan Stevens returned to reprise his role of Paul Northridge as he and Erin are married. So we spent that episode putting together and planning and experiencing the joy of their wedding. At this point, Mary Ellen and Jonesy are already an item. He has come back and is working as a vet, and their relationship is progressing. So when Paul comes to get advice from Jonesy, the two share a wonderful future brother-in-law conversation where Richard Gilliland gave Morgan Stevens some wonderful advice. It was very heartbreaking to see these two together, both of whom are now gone. Although Morgan returned for Mother's Day on Walton's Mountain when Mary Ellen and Jonesy were married, and A Day of Thanks on Walton's Mountain, those were the only 3 TV reunion movies that featured the character of Paul Northridge. When we did our subsequent reunions in the 90s, the character of Paul was not brought back. And it was said that Erin and Paul, although they now have children together, had divorced. A sad ending for Erin and Paul. And we were sorry to not have Morgan back. But he will forever be a part of our Walton family. And we will miss him very much. After the Waltons ended, Morgan went on to guest in a number of TV shows and had regular roles in the series Fame, Melrose Place, and A Year in the Life. Thank you for joining me for this tribute to actor Morgan Stevens. I'll be back with more behind the scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.